That's going to be some high fidelity recording, people now. Let's stream this out to Facebook. Continue as me. The live show with a special celebrity guest, Hans Zimmermann. Ah, yes, Hans. Come join us for the new year. And my friend Hans, psychology, leadership. No, let's say it life, leadership, and everything in between. That sounds better. Share my timeline. Who should see this? The public, Donald Trump, Elon Musk, everyone else. Go live. Waiting. Waiting. Aha. Still recording. The webinar is being live streamed. It's now happening, people. We're going to start with a sip of coffee. Get that right in the mic. Make sure that I have the sip of coffee right on the microphone. And thank you to everyone that stuck around for us to start. We had some technical difficulties, and when that goes, it goes. And what are you going to do? You're just going to sit. You're going to take it. You're going to start over. So we've got everything sorted. Hans is in the green room waiting. He's enjoying the snacks and refreshments that we serve people in the green room on the live show. He's got a nice medley of a good charcuterie and stuff like that. So he's really content. I'm gonna trust. And happy New Year to everyone. I'm going to start as I always do by talking a little bit about the time off and what's up for me, and then we're going to bring Hans on. And really, today we don't have a particular agenda. Hans and I have some items we think might be cool to talk about, but we'll kind of see where fancy takes us. We're going to let fancy be our guide. So in my life, there's a couple things going on. The first is that I'm in the phase of growing my hair out a little longer, and I'm in this terrible phase that I think women know more than men because women have more experience with longer hair generally than guys do, where it's too long to do anything funky and short with it, and it's too short to like behave. And so it's very like my hair is very much le pouf ball right now. It looks all right to me right now, but it's that experience where for about a month I'm really enamored with hats. People are like, "Wow, good pickleball match, Adam, but why did you play it wearing a fedora?" Oh, that's just a new thing I'm trying out. So that's a small little thing going on. The holidays were pretty good. I what typically happens over the holidays for me is that I release a lot of my structure, meaning I don't get up at a set time, which is quite nice because I really like sleeping in, but I'm also very committed to getting work done, and I recognize the value that structure provides me throughout most of my life. So there's this period once we start the holidays where I'm like, all right, I'm not going to force myself to wake up to an alarm, stay up as late as I want. And as time goes on, that can be a real gift, but then it can become problematic. And it becomes problematic if I don't put anything in my schedule, then there's nothing that calls me forward to eat healthy or to have good habits or to exercise or anything along those lines. And so historically, that's been a bit, maybe I'd say dangerous. But this year, it's been quite good. I made sure I scheduled a lot of time to go out for lunch with people, to meet up with friends, to go play pickleball, to go, have some kind of date with my friends online, anything along those lines, just some more structure. And I came through the holidays feeling pretty refreshed and relaxed. Whereas sometimes, ironically, when I don't create any structure at all around me, I come out of the holidays feeling pretty bedraggled. I'm like, oh dear God, get some structure around me. So came out of the holidays feeling pretty good. This is our first week back, and I've been putting a lot of attention on how do I want this new year to go for me? What are my intentions? What do I want it to look like? How do I want to be over the next 6 months between now and the next time I take off? And I'm going to share some really small wins. The first one is that I've been getting up at 7:30, which is not particularly early for me, but without any snoozing. And there was a period, maybe 5 years ago, where I was getting up every morning at 5:30 and like running a whole bunch of stuff through my morning. But over the last year, I'd say that's become really tough for a whole bunch of reasons that I could go into, but that's not really the point. The point is what happens is I'd try to set an alarm and then I'd snooze and I'd wake up a half hour after that and then after that. And so like I'm celebrating this small win of me creating some integrity for myself, saying I'm going to get up at a time and getting up at that time. So yay, small wins. And then my intention is to slowly walk that back. So 7:30 this week, next week 7 o'clock, and then the following week 6:30. And that's about where I want to be getting up right now. That's what feels good for me. So huzzah for that small win. The other thing that I'll share, and then we'll bring our guest on, is that as many of you who follow me know, I love this game called Street Fighter. And this is not really a story I'm going to share about Street Fighter at all. It's about our mindset and our context and how we get caught in it. So I'm on a number of forums, a number of what's called Discord chat channels where people come and ask for help and other people provide help. And someone came on, and the context of his request, the way of being he was bringing was, I'm doing this thing and I want you to help me. Like, give me some advice, some suggestions. And what pretty much everyone said is, stop doing that thing. That's a really bad way to approach what you're trying to achieve. Do this thing instead. And what happened was this person got entrenched. They started to defend what they were doing. Here's why I need to do it this way. And I hear you guys saying that, but you don't seem to understand that this is why I'm doing this thing, blah, 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 blah. And it became this real like argument where this person was insisting I'm doing things the right way. And then everyone else was like, that's crazy. That's not going to achieve what you want. It's a waste of your time. And it was a little bit like the metaphor of the drunk searching for their car keys in underneath the street lamp. And someone sees them doing that and are like, oh, do you need help? And they're like, yeah, I'd love help. Okay, great. Where did you lose your keys? I don't know, somewhere over there. And the person's like, well, why are you looking under the street lamp? And the drunk's like, well, because here's where there's light. It was a little bit like that. Like the person was insistent that this is where they needed to be, even though everyone was like, it's actually over here. And I myself got caught into this at first. Like, I love a good argument, especially when it's about inconsequential stuff that doesn't matter. But after a little bit, I started to be able to distinguish for myself, to create a bit of altitude and realize like, oh, this is not about the right way or anything. This person just needs to be given the opportunity to discover for themselves what everyone else has discovered. And what's happening is we all want this person to like be able to shortcut that and just, no, do it this way. This is the right way. But they simply can't. And that's made evident by the fact that they're entrenching themselves and they're arguing more and more and more. And further, we don't even know what this person's path might look like. Maybe they have to do this. Maybe this is the right way for them. And so I like this because it's a beautiful example of how attached we get to what people's process should look like and trying to help people be more optimal without realizing like trying to force someone down an optimal path is not optimal. It's suboptimal. The best we can do is support people on their journey, offer them what we have, and then if they take it, they take it. And if they don't take it, that's okay too. Peace be with them and allow them on their journey. And probably he's going to most likely explore this option and then come over here. But the more we try to make him wrong for exploring that option, the harder it's going to be for him to come over. Because now he's got this vested interest in like doubling down over here. They're making me wrong for it. I'm going to show them. And that makes it harder for him to have the freedom to choose and find his path. So funny place. I kind of noticed like, oh, wow, here's where in coaching, we'd call this on the court. I got on the court with this guy. I'm no longer able to stay off of it and objective. I'm now on the basketball court telling the players what to do. Doesn't really work. So funny. We can kind of catch ourselves doing this. We can see these places where we're attached all over the place in life. And this is arguably, I would say, one of the most challenging things about the world of coaching and leadership is we think, no, I really know, like I've got a lot of experience and I really want to deliver that experience to this person. I can really help them and I can supercharge their progress. And actually all of that insistence that we can supercharge their progress is in the way of their progress. Okay, let me have a sip of coffee. So Hans, my guest, has been a friend for, I don't know, feels almost like a decade at this point. We're getting there. We originally connected. I'd gone through the program that he was one of the founders of called Accomplishment Coaching. And I was interviewing people for my book, Too Smart to Know Better. I was interviewing really, really brilliant people. And Hans was one of the people that I reached out to. And we got along well. And that started like a relationship, a friendship. And we've just stayed in touch ever since. And so some of the stuff that I really love and admire about Hans, one is his prolificness. He's just always creating new distinctions. He's always writing more ideas out. He's always got something new to share. And very inspiring. Reminds me of my own like tendency to just like, it's coming out. What do I do? I just put it on paper. And I also really admire his brilliance. A lot of wisdom and just like ability to see through the layers to the depth of what might be happening. And then finally, I also really appreciate his humility, his willingness to be in his own journey, as opposed to having the idea of sort of having arrived or finished his journey and then being able to help other people. So Hans, let's get your camera on. Let's get your mic on. Let's get you on. There you are. Look at that. Nice striped shirt.
Hello, Adam.
Hello. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Uh-huh. Cool. So we got a bunch of topics. I'm just going to read down them, but there was one in particular I think you were eager to talk about, and then we'll kind of see where things lead us. That sound good?
That sounds good. I just want to say I'm in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica, near the fires, and it has had an emotional and psychological impact on me and my family. We're safe, we're fine, but I just like to report when something's in the background in the way of me being present. I just like to report that. So that has been going on for the last couple, 3 days and is going on today.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild. Is there anything you need?
Nope, all good.
Nope. Just to share that.
Feeling the feelings and thinking the thoughts and have a lot of compassion. We've got some new friends who've lost everything, and it's just it's challenging.
Yeah, it's a crazy time. Cool. Not cool, but cool. Okay. Well, so here's some of the thoughts you and I had bounced around. We talked about the idea of inner wealth. We talked about our essential nature. We talked about, I think you coined this one, super self-care. And we talked about the ontology of wealth, like the being of being wealthy. And we had some subtopics along there. And then most recently, the one that was really there for you, I'm just trying to bring up our chat so I can see it. I think you'd said sort of the innate goodness that's in all of us. Does that sound about right?
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. So do you want to why don't you, like, how would you headline that topic or like begin us along those lines? And then I've got some questions, but we can kind of just let the conversation lead where it leads.
Great. So, and I should say also that the air quality here is 150, which is very bad. So I'll be clearing my throat for the next hour.
Yeah.
So just a little tweak of history. I did executive and founder work for many years, about 15 years. And then in the pandemic, all of that work went away like overnight.
Right.
Because the first thing that gets thrown away by a company when things get tough is any training, coaching, consulting. And so luckily, I had a dear friend who got me a contract with a drug and alcohol rehab, a series of centers, and they were very high end. And I worked in particular with their center that was focused on ultra high net worth individuals and high net worth individuals, and worked with about 17 people over the course of a couple of years, only to discover that the fantasies that I had about wealth were just that, fantasies. That these folks, although they have a lot of zeros in their bank account and they have access to luxury and travel, and most are doing philanthropy, they have the exact same problems as everybody else. And I was shocked at how they weren't using their wealth to impact the quality of their experience of life beyond luxury, beyond having a good time and experiencing. One of my clients right now is in Antarctica, and it's just extraordinary, right? But there's this ability that we all have to access who we truly are and be living a purposeful life that has nothing to do with wealth. And at the same time, the ripple effect of people who have a great deal of resources and contacts is also fascinating to me. So working with that same client, and she's creating a rescue center for people who are involved in human trafficking and re-education as well, because she wants them to be able to not only be safe, but also step back into society.
Uh-huh.
And create a package that she's able to hand off to other cities and even other countries. And the other day we were speaking, and she said, "I said, what are we up to this year?" And she said, "Ending human trafficking." And I was like, "Well, that's so impossible. I mean, that's just great. That is
Uh-huh.
just great. Like that is an impossible game. Let's go play
Incredible
it."
vision.
Yeah, right. That in her lifetime we're going to end human trafficking that's been going on for thousands of years. So uh, everybody has the ability to impact life, small, medium, and large. And I find myself this particular month fascinated by, separate from time, separate from money, separate from current circumstances or past family dysfunction or whatever is in people's way, that we all have the ability to find our path to ourselves, become our real selves, and live a life of purpose and peace.
Mm.
And so that's the thing that's really got me right now. And I'm happy to go in whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah. Well, and you and I share like some maybe philosophy or like a way we hold kind of ourselves and our, our essential nature and stuff. Maybe let's start, perhaps you can elaborate a bit on that idea. What is, how do I know what myself is? What is my unique self or anything like that? And then I have some thoughts to bring in from like some of the objections I've heard from people. So I think that might be a good thing for us to
Sure.
chew on to start. Yeah.
We've been trying to discover who we are for thousands of years.
Yes.
And my practice now is, how integrated can I experience myself in life today? Mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, financial, marital, my son, my community. Like there's just all these different places. How integrated, how together can I have that experience today? I was chatting with my son the other day and said, "Man, I've made so much money out of alignment with myself,
Mm-hmm.
in spite of myself."
Yeah.
And now, out of some really deep work I've done in the last 2.5 years, out of some very deep pain a couple 3 years ago, I have a peace and an alignment that I've never had before. And so now I'm in the marketplace, and I'll be making money in alignment with myself, in as close alignment with myself as I can get this year, and then next year, and then the year after that. But I'll spend the rest of my life in alignment with myself in a way that I've never been before. And I'm about to turn 64.
Uh-huh.
So everybody has this opportunity to discover themselves. And what I love about it is that everybody's path is unique. Anybody who tells you they know that your path to yourself, though, that's just complete hooey. But it better include the past, the present, and the future. So, I lived a transformed life for 20 years, and I practiced transformation, and I coached and trained and consulted transformation, only to discover that the stuff from my past, although I used language acts to put it in the past,
Yeah.
it continued to creep into my day or attack me or whatever it was. And it took me, I literally got depressed in the pandemic and didn't get help and isolated and almost burned my whole life to the ground, and had an intervention by my family and a couple of counselors that were ontologically trained to realize, oh, wow, I actually have multiple issues that I have to handle. Otherwise, none of this works. And my son literally stopped speaking to me for 6 months. And my wife, we were in big trouble for a while, and my business was in danger. And so, 2.5 years and 15 books and, 8 meetings a week, I'm at peace.
Uh-huh.
So just a really quick example, when you were talking about me, I had zero internal conversation about what you were saying. Neither "aren't I wonderful" or "boy, if he only knew."
Uh-huh.
It was just, oh, that's Adam's experience of me. Isn't that nice? That actually feels good. And I have a similar experience of you, and I could speak to my admiration of you. And, to me, you're the future of coaching, and I couldn't be happier that you're sort of leading the charge. You're one of the greatest minds I know. And I'm super excited to be with you and in your presence, right? and honored to be a part of this conversation, reaching who knows what for whatever purpose. Right.
Mm. So,
So,
so
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, I was going to say, so how would you, like the first question people often want to know, especially in a conversation like this, is like, well, how do I know like that I'm integrating myself? Like where it's a bit of a moving goalpost, right? Like how do we even begin to walk that path?
Yeah, you're not going to like the answer.
I say that too, and they never do.
And in fact, I tell people, look, if you knew what it was going to take, if I could introduce you to you 3 months from now, you'd never talk to me again because you wouldn't know how do we do that and how do you sustain that, right?
Uh-huh.
But my new thing is about excellence. Like I practice personal excellence in as many areas of my life on a daily basis as possible. And so my question to people is, where have you been excellent in your life? Here, great. Where are you currently being excellent? Here, great. Imagine taking on becoming excellent in 2, 3, 5 more areas. And then ultimately over time, just having an excellent life where you're practicing excellence, which includes self-regulation in the face of challenges, which includes dealing with, oh, there's cracks in my marriage. I've got to work to get that excellent, and no longer tolerating good enough or 80% or whatever it is. And it's not a game that you have to play, but we're here. And as my mentor used to say, there's a next moment coming. Wait for it. Here it is.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you choose a fun, satisfying, powerful relationship to that moment and yourself in that moment? And excellence leads to that experience.
Right. So, but I mean, I imagine people are going to struggle with that concept too, because at least in my experience, what happens is our ego grabs a hold of it. So it'll be like, oh, look at this. You've integrated this. It's handled. And then it is to an extent, but there's always a next step
Yeah.
involved.
Yes. And so it's the difference between excellence and perfection. So
Mm.
perfection is flawless. And we can see that in diamonds, but we can't really see that in human beings unless you decide this is a flawless moment, in which case you're right. But the very next moment is chaotic and falling apart. And so excellence is a practice. Some days are better than others. Some activities are better than others. Like you, in this season, winter, I sleep more and exercise less, and it's just a season, right?
Yeah.
This is the season of hibernation. So I noticed that I've got a little hibernating fat on me to stay warm, and my motivation to get out of bed is a little bit impacted, and my motivation to go to bed is a little impacted because tea in bed with my wife reading a book, it's fabulous. Let's do
Yes,
that
indeed.
11 o'clock at night. But I got to have 8 hours in order for a piece of this, in order for me to be excellent. One of the key pieces for me is I've got to have 8 hours of sleep. Otherwise, around 3 o'clock, I'm going to need a nap. And a lot of times I've got a client to talk to at 3 o'clock. So the practice of excellence just begins with anything, just practice anything, give up something, take on something, pursue excellence, whatever that means to you. And then once your excellence in that occurs, now you've got some new confidence and motivation. That feels good. That's fun. And then at some point, you and I know there's a tolerance for, well, this is all the excellence I can handle. This is all the power and possibility I can handle. Better get some self-sabotage in here or create some people or circumstances and things to remind me of what a jerk or a loser or lazy or whatever it is that I am. Or I should really be grinding. This is way too easy. I really should be grinding harder so that I can get exhausted and get sick again.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I find like the answer I'm going to provide is it sets me up at a risk of occurring perhaps salesy or biased or just like, well, he's saying this because, but it's that like the often I think a lot of people want the result that coaching can provide, but they want to, how do I get that? That's great, Adam. How do I get that without having a coach? And if that was attainable, there would not be a thing called coaching. There wouldn't really be needing of that. Like, how do I move along the ground without impacting my joints as fast as someone on a bicycle does? You buy a bicycle and you learn to ride it. And what I love about working with my own coach is that I don't have to second guess, am I being excellent or not? I can trust her to help me see the places where my ego's gotten me, and our ego will get me. It's gonna, one of the most common things I see is people arrive at a place sort of like, sadness is bad. I don't like that feeling. So I'm going to figure out how to not, they don't realize this is what they're doing, but they figure out how to not feel their sadness. And then they're walking around sad, but not feeling it. And they're like, I've overcome sadness. And that's a really tricky thing because these people might conclude, I'm excellent. I don't feel sadness anymore. I once did. And there's like a level of depth we can't get to on our own, I think. And so I often want to just sort of alleviate people the hard work they're doing of trying to get out in front of that step they're taking. And you don't have to do that. Just get the support from someone that can help you along your journey. And then you just have to focus on your journey and trust the person you're working with. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've used books for that. I've used personal assistants for that. I've used fellowships of men for that, and women, groups of men and women for that. Like I've done it in a lot of different ways. And yeah, the one-on-one where someone's really got me and they can call me on, my a coach I've had in the past, Dr. Martin Kettlehut, used to call there was a part of me that he called the con man. And every time he said that, I just winced. I was just like, please don't say that ever again. But I finally realized, oh yeah, the dynamic part of me that doesn't have compassion for others or myself and wants to get his needs met. Oh, okay. That's a good name for that, because it does sting when he says that and reminds me, hey, there's a part of you that's not that great that you need to manage, you need to minimize.
Yes. Yeah, there's I did a lot of work with ayahuasca over the last, like, say, a couple of years, which is very ontological, it turns out, in its work. And one of the things that this plant medicine does for us is it has us confront the part of ourself free from our story about that part of ourselves. And all of us have these parts of ourselves that we judge other people for and we judge ourselves for, but we attach a story. Yeah, I'm stealing this loaf of bread, but it's because justification, justification, justification. And it's different from that asshole over there because justification, and what the plant medicine does, and I think really good coaching, is it removes those stories so we can just face and be like, oh, I'm a thief. And if I can sit with that, then I can start to be compassionate towards it. And then I can start to be compassionate towards other people and sort of recognize, oh, maybe they have a story. Maybe there's a reason they're doing that. And it allows me to soften. And then as I soften, I can face it more. And as I can face it more. Yeah, go ahead, Hans.
I was just going to say, I want to be really careful about I am a thief. I am two of the most powerful words.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's like there's a part of me that wants to steal in order to get their needs met. I would just rephrase it that way, as opposed to labeling yourself a thief.
Sure.
But yeah, there's I'm working on a thing about lying, cheating, and stealing, and putting it out there publicly and being like, it's going to be hard for people to hear. Where are you lying to others or yourself? Where are you cheating? How are you cheating? What are you stealing? Are you stealing time? Are you stealing money? Are you stealing people's skill set?
Yeah.
So I'm with you, and to not hide those parts of ourselves, to turn and face those parts of ourselves, that is a courageous undertaking.
Indeed.
And you do not have to do it. You can get through all of life without ever having to deal with any of that stuff. But my intellect, my joke with people is, you've either got to get after this or you got to buy a brick and start hitting yourself in the head with it to start to, get stupid.
Yes.
Yeah. Not know that there is that gap and that you're avoiding stepping into that gap, because, man, closing that gap is what's possible in life. And if you can become the full expression of yourself, which, by the way, only lasts in this moment, because you've got to do it again and again and again. And some days, weeks, months, years are easier than others. But if you're not going to do that, you've got to distract yourself, and you've got to numb out and act out and dissociate and create dynamics to interrupt the fact that you could do something about it. Like, this is happening to me again and again. Is it happening again?
Surely not this time. Oh yeah, this time. Yeah. Uh-huh. So when we're talking about, like, this natural state of being, how do people even know that's a thing? How do they know that they're touching it? Like, how?
So everybody has the experience of a peak moment. Time disappeared. I was in joy. I was in bliss. I was overwhelmed by nature. Everybody has a peak moment that they can report. And usually it's without some sort of stimulant. Sometimes it involves a stimulant, but or depressant, whatever. But usually it's just I'm me in this moment, and my consciousness, my self consciousness disappears. So that's available.
Hmm.
80 plus years ago, science and philosophy both discovered, hey, you can access that state at will, which sounds awesome, except
Hmm.
it's really hard because our
Yes.
psychology, our emotions, our history, our people, circumstances, and things all want conspire to keep us in not that state.
Yeah.
And so all the stuff around us swirling around is just it's so easy to just give up and do the best you can.
Why do you why do you think, or why would you suggest we conspire subconsciously or otherwise to keep ourselves out of that state? Like, because a lot of people would be like, well, why wouldn't I want to just be in a flow? Why wouldn't I want to be fully experiencing and expressing in this moment?
So if you look at a child, they're mostly present. They're mostly there. And they're
Hmm.
joyful and they're exploring and they're excited. There's all this cool, higher level emotional stuff going on. And then they get whacked by life.
Hmm.
And usually the whacking happens with the family. And now the people that say they love me just whacked me mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever. And so they say they love me. I can't trust them. I'm from them. Therefore, I can't trust myself. And away we go. Right.
Uh-huh.
And so there's just a part of us that wants us to stay comfortable and safe from danger. And for me, it's really left over from survival traits that were important when we were in nature and there were saber-toothed tigers out there in the dark. And we're just that part of our brain gets triggered. And I treat my wife like she's a shark trying to kill me.
Yeah.
And she just said, "Can you take out the garbage?" Right.
Yeah.
And so, can I self-regulate to the point where I can see my thoughts, see my feelings, see my reaction, see my reality, and do something about it? Yes, and it's rigorous work. It's not for everyone. But as a former trainee said, um, he raised his hand and he said, this is the only game in town, baby." I was like, you are correct. But it is a way, it's not the way. And
Yes.
it has its own set of consequences. It's not better. It's definitely not better. And there are absolutely days where you're going to want to forget that you ever did any of this work and go back to just normal Cheetos and Netflix and yelling at your dog or whatever it is. Right?
Yeah. We all watch The Matrix. Do you remember The Matrix?
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's like 26 years old now. And Cyrus, the villain played by Joe Pantoliano, Joey Pants, is sitting there, and the way that the Matrix is set up, it's so clear he's the villain and he's a dumbass because he's taken that blue pill and he's going to be put back in the Matrix. But we don't the way in which we kind of dismiss him and hold him as a villain shows how little space we have for that part of ourselves and how very human and understandable it is for us to really like, ugh, I got to take responsibility again. Ugh, I got to take a look on my side of the fence. Ugh, why can't it just be this person's fault who did this to me? The world's stupid and it should change. It can. And we all want to go back in the matrix frequently.
And for me, all of the parts work that I've been doing in the last 2.5 years has got me to a place of peace that I've never experienced before,
Mm.
or where I enjoy my time. I like myself. I enjoy the company of men. I don't need the approval of a woman, and on and on and on. And it's brand new. It's a brand new experience, and it's taken me my entire life to get here. Which at 64, it's tough. I got to battle the thoughts of regret. But this is what it's taken to get here, and I am here, and I get to live this life for the rest of my life, and who knows what happens. But it's hard fought. It's hard won, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy to have made it here because again, I was talking to my son the other day, and he's like, "Dad, I have no idea what it took you to get here." He kind of softened towards me in the last week, and I pointed to it. I said, "I noticed you just kind of softened your heart." He
Mm.
said, "Yeah, I realized that I have no idea what it took you to get here, what it took to be a husband. You've been in business for 30 years successfully. What is it to be a father? Like all the things that you did to get to today. I have no idea what that's like." And I was like, thank you for your compassion.
Hmm. Yeah, and for seeing your humanity, That's a very challenging thing for us children to do towards our parents.
Yes, sir.
Uh-huh. Yeah, they exist as parents, not as humans doing their best and bumbling along like the rest of us.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Um, so natural state of being is kind of like a funny thing I find. It reminds me a little of the quote about, happiness, like you don't get it by, how does it go? It's something along the lines of like you can't find it by pursuing it, but only those who pursue it will encounter it. Like we kind of have to,
Yeah.
if you're sort of like, what's my natural state of being? What's my natural state of being? It's going to elude you. But along that journey, almost peripherally, it's going to show up as you do this kind of work towards it.
Yeah. I was in a room full of very wealthy people. I was doing a little training with them. And I was shocked that only one person was taking care of their well-being. Everybody else was just bopping along.
Mm-hmm.
And well-being practices are exercise, nutrition, water, stress reduction, on and on and on. And they had gobs and gobs of money, and they just were being normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I have this fantasy. If I had multiple millions or billions of dollars, I would be absolutely making sure that I was having the best nutrition and the best psychology and the best emotional support, like all these things to make today the best and to de-stress myself so that I would add days onto the end of my life. And one of these guys was just kind of doing that. He wasn't even, it wasn't conscious for him. Oh yeah, I'm adding days to the end of my life. Boy, oh boy. I'm like, that's shocking. And everybody has that opportunity right now today to add days to the end of your life. Everybody. Because stress is the killer.
Mm-hmm.
Stress leads to so much illness and disease. And so you want to alter your experience of yourself, let something go and take something on. We all know what to do.
Yeah.
We all know what to do. You go to the gym and you exercise and you stop eating that. Or you take daily walks, and as you're taking the walks, listen to peaceful music. I mean, there's lots of things to do, but just pick one thing to let go of and take on, and notice any shift in your experience of yourself and life over a bit of time. Like give it 4 to 6 weeks. Don't expect it today.
Mm-hmm. And notice also like your resistance and what gets in the way of that. There's so much data, so much juice available in like discovering how we be about that one simple thing. That's so rich. One thing I find.
Sorry, Adam.
Please.
You're absolutely right. You may have to schedule. I walk at 12 o'clock. I eat my lunch and take a walk at 12 o'clock every day. Because life conspires to distract you from what you say you want and what you say you're committed to, especially the new stuff, which is why a lot of New Year's resolutions fall by the wayside. My gym is packed full of strangers, boy. Like, wow, I've never seen you before. Hope to see you for the rest of the year.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Like I often have this idea, this almost like a philosophy, not a philosophy, but a perspective that our life has precisely enough room in it for everything that's currently there. And then there's, if we want to add anything else in, that's going to have an impact. It's not like we have a void in our calendar that says like, here's a space for that thing that I haven't figured out in 6 months that I'm going to do. It just doesn't show up that way.
Yeah. It's not going to happen accidentally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And boy, do we hope it will. We really relate to the world we've created with a lack of reverence.
And then when it does, we have no idea how it happened. So we enjoy it while it's here, but then it's gone again. And we're just like, oh, I guess that's just me. That's just
I don't have any power to create that. I can't be at cause to make that happen.
And then those moments of being do occur for most people accidentally. Like, wow, I am totally present. This is awesome. Best grilled cheese I've ever had. And then it just slowly dissipates. And we're human beings. And so our humanity is very reactive. The human part of us is very reactive. And so we wake up into that humanity if we don't do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if you remember the movie Alien, where the guy gets attacked and he's on the
face hugger,
and the thing is on his face, and then they look again and the thing's gone. And again, my mentor Tex Johnston said that's your humanity, because you wake up with that every day and then it goes inside of you, and that's what you experience the world through. And
Mm.
so there are multiple practices to distinguish yourself, to separate yourself from the human that wants to love, eat, have sex, watch TV, procrastinate, work too hard, whatever all that stuff is, and who you say you are, what you say you're here for, and the life that can come from those declarations, those commitments, those actions in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So each day before I get out of bed, I say who I am and what I'm up to, and invite my higher power to use me on purpose. And that's how my day goes, right? As opposed to how do I feel or what do I think or I'm going to skip breakfast and see how it goes or whatever that human part of me wants to do to make things scary or interesting or dangerous or exciting.
Yeah. Sharafat asks a good question here. She says, how does self-care relate to our natural state of being? What are your thoughts there?
Hi, Sharafat. Nice to hear from you. Sharafat's done an amazing job in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Man, just transformed herself. God bless
yes.
her. I notice that when children are hungry, they eat, and when children are tired, they sleep. They might play a little bit longer, but they sleep. There are simple instructions that we can live by that aren't attached to our ego, aren't attached to the shoulds of our culture or the shoulds of our family or the shouldn'ts of our culture, or the shouldn'ts of our family. But it is at this point not a natural thing because we have a culture that says you should do more, you should be better, you should have more, which means I'm doing rather than taking care of my well-being.
Right.
And so I have 10 items that I handle every day, and I've got enough mastery after 30 years of doing this that I'm reliable to be in the 100% range every day. And when you start, you're lucky to get 30%, 40%,
yeah,
50%. But you start taking care of yourself and life shifts because your whole system calms down. And so the 5 basic ones that I ask people to take on are food, sleep, stress reduction, water, and exercise. Just take those 5 things on and take them on until you can do 100% any day you want to. And then consider having a couple of 100% days and then consider having a 100% week and see what happens.
And just for everyone, 100% being whatever you gauge 100% being. Like for me, my well-being would be if I drank 3 liters of water a day.
That's
great.
Right.
That's your 100%.
Yeah. And checking off all 5 of those items. Right.
Yeah.
And from there, you get access to a natural experience of life and yourself that you don't from not taking care of yourself. Mm-hmm. So that we have to hold ourselves accountable to take care of ourselves is an odd thing, but that's the culture we live in. That's the planet we currently live on. And it takes a support structure that my old friend Christopher said, you've got to create a structure that's sufficient to your resistance.
Yes.
Right. And so that structure for me for many years was a grid that hangs on my fridge or my bathroom mirror with a pen, because just going to look for the pen can distract you. And
yes,
you're not
so true.
Why do I have this again? What was I going to do with it?
Back to Facebook.
That's right. And so measuring it, because we love checking stuff off, and we love seeing a high grade, and we're all raised in kind of that school system. So winning, succeeding, and driving your emotional intelligence up and driving, your ability to focus your intellect, all those things feel great.
I also find it.
Sorry, Adam, I'm sorry. I've got one more thing.
Please. Yeah.
Being present is our natural state. It's our birthright. Well-being is our natural state. It's our birthright. But both of those things now take work to get to. It's just, that's where we are.
Yeah. It's also incredible the impact it has on us when we, like our well-being list that we set out and then practicing taking those things on. First of all, a lot of us fall into this path of like, I should just be able to do this. And I think it really bears sort of honoring or maybe exalting or like just underlining what you said about how our culture is a culture that says you don't come first. You need to get in line. You need to blah, blah, blah. And it does this a million different subtle ways. And most of them are not intended with any malice. It's just the way that things are.
Yeah.
And so taking care of our well-being is much harder than we think it ought to be. And that's okay. It just requires more energy put into our system. And the second thing I notice is a well-being list like you're describing is a bit of a practice of integrity. I'm saying I'm going to do these things, and then I'm practicing honoring my word to myself. And I notice when when I do that stuff, like if I get the amount of exercise I set out for myself, not only do I feel better physically in my body, minus the parts of my joints that are slowly rotting as I age into the middle age, but minus that, my self-talk goes down because I'm acting in alignment with myself, and that has a tendency to diminish some of the negative stories I might tell about myself, any of that sort of stuff. So there's a lot of knock-on effects that happen as we practice this sort of stuff.
And then we've also got, it's the procrastination piece, but Los Angeles and the Silicon Valley, people are grinding, people are overdoing it.
Yes.
And so that doesn't contribute to your well-being either. And that's an adrenal state. And now you're like a drug addict. The only time you feel worthy is when you're in an adrenal state. And then you've got the hangover and the withdrawals when you try to stop that, when you try to rest and recharge and play from that. You got to get back to that adrenal state by overworking again. And it's just this deadly cycle. So either way, procrastinating or grinding, neither one of those are going to lead to being present.
You also get the grinding of well-being, which is, there it is. There's the ego hiding in that. Oh, this is the way you're going to outdo me. Great. I'll just hide out here. We'll have you grind well-being.
I had a lady who she did 100% every day for the first 7 days she just hired me, and I was just like, okay, do that.
Yeah.
And she did it again the second week, and she did it again the third week, and then she didn't show up. And then I saw her. She actually quit, and I saw her a couple weeks later, and I said, "What happened?" And she said, "I'm a starter. Like I can outrun anybody, including that well-being thing." And she said, and then I quit.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's a strategy.
Yeah.
And it worked for her until then, but she wasn't talking to me because all the strategies in her life were working out, right?
Yeah.
I just presented another thing to accomplish. She accomplished it, and then she had to quit.
It's worth knowing to ourselves internally, I think, that like what we're doing is working on some level, including the fact that what we're doing we may feel negative about and judge ourselves for. That's working on some level. It's working to get us the life that we have, and there's a comfort to that life that we have and a status quo, and with status quo and comfort comes safety. And it's important that we acknowledge that as we step out into the unknown, because if we don't, then we get blindsided by it. Like, why aren't I just doing all of this stuff that Hans is suggesting I do? Like, why doesn't it work? I don't understand. I should just be able to. Like, no.
Tracy Goss, an author from about 40 years ago. The book is
Last Word on Power.
Last Word on Power. It's about reinventing yourself as a human being, and she talks about just that, where you have a strategy that you've won all these years, but that strategy is also limiting. You can't really win as long as you're using a strategy that's based in your sort of automatic human being.
Yes. Yeah, this is where a lot of modalities for me kind of fall apart, like NLP or stuff like that. There's plenty of possibility and opportunity there, but at the end of the day, there's strategy. And so a strategy is by definition going to be limited. It's only going to get us so far before it becomes, even ontology as taught by Landmark and stuff. You can meet some of these people who have been doing it for years and years. They're very steeped in the languaging of it, and they can talk their way brilliantly through anything, but they don't seem to be very embodied. And you start to be like, do you actually feel well? Like, I hear you talking your way out of this, but you don't feel vital.
Right. That's right. I knew a guy who was a high-level leader there at Landmark, and he was working monster hours, and he finally walked away, and they're like, why are you going? And he said, well, you say I can have anything I want, and I don't want this. So I'm going to go now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. One of the biggest lessons for me, a big shift in my leadership journey, was realizing, I call it the ontological trap, whereas we start to really steep ourselves in ontological philosophy, living, we realize I can be with anything.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a breakthrough and a miracle and incredible.
Yeah.
But then what happens is we forget that there's also the phenomenology of our life. Just because I can live and work in a dumpster and be okay with that, maybe I want to live and work on a beach all the same. And there's a journey people have to make where they start to realize, oh, it's okay to want stuff to look a particular way too.
Yeah. Very good.
We've got another question from, so a number of people saying they love that book. Sarah Bolton saying, I love that book. Thank you for recommending it. And Dave McDonald saying, is wild how safe the daily pursuits of dopamine and create comfort.
Yep.
Yes.
True.
And Sherifat says, I love how she asked this. So does it mean if I take on the 5 things in my well-being list, that it is guaranteed to leave me at a natural state of being?
Uh-huh. Well, it reminds me of my coach Tex. He said, Hans, if we just took what you wanted, and I didn't have to work with you to get it, and I just went out there in the world, yeah, I could guarantee you. But the fact that we're working with you means I can't guarantee you anything. But I can promise that if you go in this direction and you take on these practices, that things are likely to happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Sherifat, no, there's no guarantee, and you're going to encounter areas of resistance that are the exact opposite of the joy, the power, the possibility that's available. And if you'll not take it personally when there's despair, if you'll see it as, oh, there's despair to keep me from the joy, like it's equal, right? You have access to joy, you have access to love and wisdom and passion and enthusiasm, all kinds of really great stuff. But the weapons that part of you that doesn't want you to not be safe is going to use, it's your thoughts, your feelings, your body sensations, the people, the circumstances and things around you. And it doesn't require your consciousness anymore. So you're going to get interruptions. You're going to get things that seem like they're exactly the opposite, or you can't do it anymore, or it doesn't work. But I will promise you that if you have well-being as a practice, that you will find yourself more resilient in the face of challenges, happier on a more regular basis. Like you will have an experience of life that you don't get from ignoring your well-being. And then if you take it on at higher and higher and higher levels, you get access to more and more possibility, but also bigger resistance externally and internally. But you've got now you've got the well-being to stand on to deal with it, which is very different than I'm scared, I've got anxiety, there's fear, there's insecurity, and I'm going to do this anyway. Right? That's a completely different experience of life. I am resilient. I take a breath and I'm back to myself. That's new. That's new.
It makes me think of that quote about the pursuit of happiness, but also like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, well, if I get the bottom part of this pyramid handled, security of job, security of food, that sort of stuff, will that guarantee that I'll get self-actualization at the top of the pyramid? No, but it's going to get you a heck of a lot closer, and you're going to have a foundation upon which to reach for that next level of stuff. And
Yes.
You used a word despair, which I want to touch on a bit, because we're at a period, with the election results, regardless of how people situate themselves and just the way the world's going, everything happening. I'm present to a lot of despair, a lot of fear, a lot of people just struggling to be with what's going on. And I'm curious, one, about how you navigate that, and like how you support people to navigate that.
Well, I do a lot of reading. I do a lot of historical reading, and seeing patterns, seeing cycles. This is human beings being human.
Yeah.
This has been going on for thousands of years.
Normalizes it a bit, doesn't it?
It does, and it doesn't make it better.
Yeah.
There are some scary things going on, but I just had a very bright woman say, "I'm taking a break from politics. It just isn't good for me." And so these are scary times. I am in a segment of society that has a lot of luxuries that a lot of people don't have. And I'm quite grateful. And for me, I'm going to be the best person that I can be on a daily basis, interacting with the world in the best way that I can, from a place of love and being present and relationship and possibility. And I'm one person, but there's 8 billion of us on the planet. So if we all did that, wouldn't that be delightful? And my goal in my life for many years has been, I want to be alive when our planet tips from fear to love. Don't know if that's going to happen, but that is my goal. I wake up into, I'm on team love, and I'm going to do that for the rest of my life, and we'll see. There are a lot of people on team fear, and they're trying to get more people on their team.
Yeah. They've learned to use the internet. They're good at it.
But I wasn't born in fear, and most people aren't. And my love is a force for good. And I'm not talking about airy fairy mamby pamby love. I'm talking about a strong love and a fierce love and a real love. There was an interaction on the beach the other day. A guy was walking his dog, and he walked by me and he picked up some garbage that another man had dropped, and it turned out that the other man was a drug addict.
Mm.
And these two guys were about to come to blows, right? And one of them, and the guy who was not a drug addict had a dog, and I said, "Let me take your dog." I'm not encouraging him to have a fight, but let's
Yeah.
not get the dog involved.
Uh-huh.
And it de-escalated over time, but it was just such sort of a sad commentary on this guy just wants to live in a neighborhood where people aren't dropping garbage as they walk around, right?
Yeah.
And where drug addiction is actually addressed and dealt with and supported, like let's deal with it. And he was cynical and resigned and pissed off and yelling at drug addicts, and he was going to fight a drug addict, right? Like that's how he was going to express himself.
Yeah.
And as a dog lover, I'm like, he loves his dog, girlfriend, whatever. He's a good person. He's picking up garbage, but it's just a very frustrating time.
Yeah.
And my challenge to people is, can you have compassion for them?
Yeah.
And yourself and your people. What's that old phrase? I've met the enemy and they is us. If we demonize those people who are currently scaring us, there's no conversation, there's no relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I was shocked a decade ago, realizing how many people didn't feel heard, didn't feel like they had a voice, and they wanted a somebody, and that somebody stood up and said, "I'm your guy," and they were like, "Yes, you are."
Yeah.
And I'm also shocked at how many people I know are like, "That's my guy."
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's your guy. Okay.
It reminds me a lot. Did you ever read or see the Three Body Problem on
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
so the Chinese woman at the start, they work to sort of show the the tribulations, the challenges of the Chinese I guess Communist Party, like
Yeah.
the coercive pressure. And then it comes to this point where these aliens that we make contact with, one of them responds, fortunately, and is like, do not send a follow-up message. This is a warfaring species. We will come and harm you and end your life, blah, blah, blah. And she says, we need it. Come. And,
Right.
in that, there's this sort of like despair and wrapped in cynicism and, da 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 da. And not everyone, but I certainly have talked to some people where I can feel that in how they chose to lean in this way, sort of a just like, fuck this, you know? And I, one, I have a lot of empathy for that. And then two, I'm just present to the fact that cynicism is like the gravity all of us are, if we want to live into a planet of love, cynicism is the force that we're fighting against because it just slowly erodes us and it's the accumulation of disappointment and heartbreak that naturally occurs as we live our life. We start with ideals and then slowly but surely we get proven nope, nope, nope. And we have to learn how to complete on those and to have them be like, that's just how it happened. And I can still hold out my heart and I can heal from that or even deepen. I can allow myself to be heartbroken and then deepen from that place. And that's part of the journey of love. Not an easy one, not always a pleasant one, not always a fun one, but a rich one.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. And again, I'm reminded of a lot of this stuff. I read history a lot too. It's quite fascinating. I was reading a piece a while back about someone, this was around the time, this will be for somewhat older generations when George W. had come into power. And there was a lot of concern about how he was going to do things, which all seems so charming and quaint now in hindsight. But I was reading this article that someone had posted, and it talked about how, like, I don't see hope for my children anymore, and I don't see how we're going to overcome this, and blah, 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 blah. And all very relatable, very understandable. And the thing that was really fascinating at the end of it was that the person that the original poster said, this was written during the time of the Cold War. And it just really struck me like, oh, this stuff really is circular. And that can be called comfort because our fear's in the moment and our fear's not intellectual, but it can help us create a bit of spaciousness for ourselves and realize like, oh yeah, humans have felt this way before. And then we felt really good. and then we felt this way before, and then we felt differently, and that's part of the journey that we're on.
And we're breaking stuff down. We're definitely breaking stuff down.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I wouldn't have chosen to do it this way, but
Yes.
things are breaking down. Like
Yeah.
there's lots to talk about.
Uh-huh. Uh, I, I'm just thinking like a lot of my own breakdowns. I don't know that I would have chosen to do them the way that they ended up happening. And yeah, that's how they happened. And on the other side, it's been very, very beautiful. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I know you've come through like a real potent breakthrough, one of the biggest maybe in your lives, and probably not the way you would have chosen it, but thank goodness you're here. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. What do you, this is a bit off topic, but what do you find your people, the people you support, struggle? Like, what are some of their biggest struggles? Where do they get caught the most?
It's daring to dream.
Say a little more about that.
We all want a safe, comfortable existence at our
Yeah.
core. Just, I don't want to be in danger. I don't want the drama and the chaos. But there's just, like you said earlier, there's no way to get access to what you want without
Mm.
battling through some stuff. And there's only two places. It's either you're dealing with old stuff and it's on repeat, and so you get to react to it how you always have and survive it how you always had, or you create a future that's an extraordinary challenge for you, and now the things that are happening are because of that future that you invented. So my old patterns and problems are really boring,
Uh-huh.
and you'd never guess it based on how many times and how many variations I created to go through. And my future is fascinating, and it's infinitely more fascinating than my past. And so my challenge is to keep that present in my mind and keep meeting and overcoming those challenges on the way to realizing that, enjoying that, overcoming things that are in the way. And there is just a fundamentally different experience from a future that I've invented and created than a past that kind of happened to me and that I'm kind of dragging along
Mm.
as a legacy.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a scary thing to live into a created future because by definition, if it's outside of what we already know, we don't know how to get there. And frankly, we can see all the reasons why not go there. And so just even the, like you said, daring to dream, just the dream of it itself, just asking for it, just putting it out there is an edgy thing.
Yeah.
Sarah Bolton and Sharifat both say that they want to hear about the fascinating future you are creating. Can you share anything about that?
So I'm working on unlocking how to speak to ultra high net worth individuals in a way that resonates with them so that full integration and purposeful living is something that they take on, and they take it on with a passion. And I don't know how to do that yet, but the amount of resources, the amount of relationships that they have are the ripple effect is worldwide and very powerful. And so my goal is that once I've figured out how to do that and have done it for a little bit, is to actually create a consulting company where I tap into my network of people who've been doing this for 15, 20, 30 years and start to work with ultra high net worth individuals and be able to manage a team as opposed to it's just me. And so expand that and have everybody kind of pulling in a great direction, being willing to inspire. Because I think there's an embarrassment about wealth. There's an embarrassment of riches for sure. I read the other day, $75,000 will get it done for most people. Like anything beyond that is, now it's work.
Right.
And I can't live in Los Angeles on $75,000, but I could live somewhere else, right? I could live in another country.
Yeah.
So having people get clear on who they are, what they're here for, and get after making the difference that they're here to make on the planet and influencing other people with a lot of resources and a lot of relationships to do the same. Because I think that there's a we all have sort of the arrogance around time. Like I got more time. There's more time,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, hey, today's the day. This is the moment. Who are you
Yeah.
being? Who are you being in this moment? What purpose are you living into in this moment? And Sherifat's a great example. When I met her a couple of years ago, there were a lot of circumstances, and they were very real.
Yeah.
And I now know her as a joyful being who had the courage to start talking when nobody was listening to her, who had the courage to start proposing things and asking questions when nobody was listening to her, and then just systematically creating a life where she is a beacon of light and love. And she's got her audience today, tomorrow, and next year. And she no longer worries about who's going to listen. She just speaks because there's stuff to say.
Yes.
There's stuff to say from love, from presence, from encouraging other people to step into the possibility of who they can be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh. Um, yeah, it's really interesting the sort of people that you're creating a future with, in partnership with, for. I did some brief work with venture capitalists, and you know, one of them was sharing they're working 17 hours a day. Holy mackerel. And then the thing that I was really present to is that a lot of these people are so good at this one thing. They're laser beam. They're super focused. And the challenge with that is that it makes it very challenging for them to turn their attention anywhere else. And so, one person was sort of asking for some support with a particular thing. And I was offering, like, here's how you might look at this from a coaching lens as opposed to a different lens. And she's like, I think I'll just not do that thing. And then like back to the laser beam. And so it's the thing I'm really present to with money is it's an excellent painkiller. With more money, you can buy more treats, you can do more stuff, you can get more extravagant, and all of that will dull the pain or numb you for a period of time. But like opiates, we need more and more as time goes on to quell the same amount of pain. And further, the pain tends to get worse because we're running on a broken leg, or whatever it happens to be. So
Yeah, I went to go look at a place to live yesterday, and in the garage is the Porsche GT3 and the Mercedes G-Wagon, and it's this glorious apartment. And this guy bought this condo, has his two cars here, but he works in New York, and so he's not out here often enough to justify just keeping it open. So he's going to rent it out, and he'll store his vehicle somewhere. But I was just like, he's in New York. Now I don't know how he feels about New York, but man, 2 blocks from the ocean, and you got the GT3
yeah.
and the G-Wagon. That's looking pretty good. But he's got to make that money to afford that lifestyle, whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Let's just do a couple like recommendations. So like maybe a book, any books that you've read recently that you really enjoyed, and they can be either nonfiction or fiction.
The book Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Greaves. I really suggest people take on their emotional intelligence, because you can raise your emotional intelligence, and that's just amazing that you can do that. If we could raise our intellectual intelligence, we would do it. But the fact you can raise your emotional intelligence is brilliant, and that's that guy does a really nice job. It's a number of authors, but I remember Greaves.
Emotional Intelligence 2.0.
Yeah, by Greaves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then I just recommended the other day 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. It's just such solid research that he did for many, many years. And it's just great fundamental reminders for this is how to craft a good life. This is what works and has worked and is working. So I'm going to go old school on a book recommendation.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
and
the classics.
The last word on power is tough to find. But there's an outline that someone wrote for a college paper that's out there, but it's worth looking for, and you'll probably find it used for $6 somewhere.
Yeah,
it's a great read.
It's the perfect book to prove the adage, don't judge a book by its cover. It's just so ugly and such a potent book. Very dense. I like it very much.
My joke about it is it's like if I handed you a gallon of creme brulee, you wouldn't eat it all in one sitting. So read a couple of pages and set it down, read a couple of pages and set it down.
Yes. Yeah. I would, what I've read recently, I've been reading a lot of fiction. I've really enjoyed The Machineries of Empire is the book that I've been reading, which is a space opera. I like to recommend some fiction books because sometimes we can, in this line of work or this way of living, we can get very focused on like, whatever. And it's important for, at least for me, part of my well-being is reading books that I enjoy. It helps me go to bed sooner because
Me
I'm
too.
eager to get into bed because it's
Yeah.
reading time. So
Yeah.
Machineries of Empire has been an exquisite, really, really good series. What about a TV or a movie? Anything along those lines that you've seen recently that sort of inspired you?
I got to be careful about TV because it is definitely addictive for me. Someone will recommend a series and I'm like, 27 episodes. Yeah, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I like the Three Body Problem. I'm tempted to watch the sequel to what's the big game show where you die if you don't win.
Squid Game.
Yeah, I'm tempted to
Yeah.
watch the second season of that. Yeah, but I'm pretty careful about TV shows, movies, even.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But I'm loving anything, any old movies. I'll go down the list of 100 best movies of all time and be like, I have not seen that one.
Yes. Yeah. The series that we've really liked lately is called Abbott Elementary,
Okay.
which is an ensemble comedy on Disney. Disney Plus has it. I can't remember where it might be on Peacock. And what I love about it is, first of all, I like ensemble comedies. I like a lot of people that are funny. Second, it's based in an elementary school. And in that context, they have a lot of room for humor and they also have a lot of room for the humanity of the teachers and what they're trying to work through. Like, I think that's a fairly honest portrayal. And so there's a lot of like, it can be very touching because it's very funny at the same time, but you're also seeing these teachers make the best in a situation where there's not a lot of funding and stuff like that. So we really enjoyed that a lot. And then as a bonus, where I live, there's not much exposure for me to African American or to Black people. Victoria's high Asian population, but not a lot of Black people. And so I really like getting to watch a show that is, I'm sure, people could say, well, it's whitewashed or whatever. It's going through Netflix or whatever. That's all fine and good. But it's just nice to be exposed to some of the culture that I'm not as present to where I live. And
Very good.
so I really like that show too.
Awesome.
Uh-huh. Why don't we finish with some acknowledgement, Hans, and then we'll be done.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Adam, can
great.
I acknowledge you?
What's that?
Can I acknowledge you?
Yes, I would love that. I'm ready.
Hmm. I try to imagine what you were like before this work. And I imagine that you were dynamic and fun and funny, that people enjoyed you, and that you had a bright mind and a great personality. Uh, that you encountered this work and then dove in, and out of diving in, realized that you have a lot to say about it, you have a lot to share about it, and that you took on writing books and doing a podcast and training people with your wife. They all of it to me is courageous and loving and compassionate and kind. And I don't know what it takes to be you, but I imagine that there's all kinds of stuff that you do and deal with that we don't know about and we're never going to know about. And I just want to thank you for all of that.
Thank you. And you're welcome. Mm. So Hans, I without a doubt want to start just by acknowledging your brilliance, because it's very palpable to me, and I love ontology very dearly, and you are one of the men who's brought that into my life more pervasively with more depth, just allowed me to be more present and to get to be in this line of work more. And I think without people like you, I would be reaching for something like that, but I wouldn't have words to get my hands around it. I wouldn't be able to play with it to the same extent. And I acknowledge you for being a philosopher and like kind of a researcher, but not necessarily with your nose in the book, but just a man who lets his life be an experiment and learns from it. And like all experiments, sometimes you set out a hypothesis and you test it and it works and it's good. And other times you set out a hypothesis and you're like, holy crap, that's not the way it went. And I really acknowledge you for your leadership and being a man who would never ask people to do something that you weren't, and that courageously steps off of the diving board again and again and again. And finally, thanks for your playfulness and your ease and your grace with which you navigate all of this. Oh, and the last thing I really want to acknowledge you for is your generosity. There's a way in which you bring people into the conversation even today with just such um, lack of like strategizing. It's just there for you to do, to acknowledge the people that are around us. And so I'm really grateful for that too. Thanks for all of who you be.
Thanks for seeing me so clearly.
Mm-hmm. All right. Where do people find you if they want to learn more about you, follow more of your thoughts, that sort of stuff? Where do they go?
Yeah, if you want to, there's I think 47 different forms on the form section of my website that you're welcome to. And the website is ontoco.com, ontoco.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well. And that's it for me in social media. Yeah, so I'm happy to chat with people about what they're up to. And my job is to be in the relationship and support business, and it's worked for 30 years, and I continue to do that. So if you want to talk, press the schedule button and let's have a chat.
It's on to co.
Yes.
I was saying in my head on Toco. So that's good to hear you say that too. Now it's
Someday I'm going to open a taco stand and I'm going to have a killer name.
just park that domain until that point. All right. This has been fantastic. Thank you, Hans, for being with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Sharafat, Rachel, nice to see you. Dave, who else can we thank? Sarah, Bolte. We had a few others. Jess, Darren. Thanks, everyone, for coming. Thanks for your comments and your questions and just your attention and being in this work with us. Bye, everyone.
I know.
And then you just hang tight for one sec, Hans. I'm going to stop